Today's episode of the Writ Wit is brought to you by the quarterly serial The Adventures of Captain Writ. For more, please tune into your nearest old-timey radio and join us on yet another creative caper. We'll return you to the Writ Wit after our latest excerpt.
The day begins much like most do in Ritopolis, with some partial clouds buffering brilliant sunshine on all sides. It was a great day to stroll out of doors, look for some inspiration, get some exercise, and make sure to take care of the body, not just the mind.
Such a beautiful day. A pity that most of the creative types here would simply say, I should write a scene with this kind of amazing weather, then just stay in.
This weather is so nice. I'm still trying to get to the scene where I can write something like it in my story, but I need to stretch my arms and get some coffee.
Instead of that, why don't we go outside? The weather is meant to be walked in, not just inside a nap.
Go outside? Are you insane? My porcelain skin would burn terribly.
Fine, suit yourself. But still, I'm having trouble finding the right inspiration to move ahead. Gee, I wish something would just strike me with inspiration rather than your boring existence.
Suddenly, they descended like a disaster, making noises and shocking both of the writers in the room. The chaos was yet to be known by the public at large, given most hadn't complained about their existence. But these two fledgling writers knew exactly who had ambushed them.
The Plot Ninja Clan! Did you get a look at their faces?
Of course not, dude. They're ninjas. What do you think they do to your story?
I'm still checking.
As the dog days of summer approached and more people were lulled into this relaxed pace, the plot ninjas attacked with more frequency. When the captain heard about this, he was also stunned.
Ninjas? It seems far-fetched. Surely it can't be possible.
But that's what the complaints said. There have been several in the past week now. But the bizarre thing is, no one really asked me to do anything.
Then why call for help?
Because I don't want this brand of assistance in the first place. My story was doing just fine before they showed up and ruined it.
I suppose that's fine if you say so, fine citizen. So, what can you tell me about the attacker?
There were several, all dressed in black garb and nearly full face masks.
So you couldn't get any unique, defining features?
Well, that depends on your definition of unique. I call their attire impossible to mistake.
Fine, I'll see if I can do anything about your... ninjas.
The Plot Ninja Clan! They've harmed my friend's favorite draft for the last time!
It's apparent to me that to eradicate this menace, I must be more familiar with their methods. The question is, how do I set a trap for them? Maybe it requires somebody writing, since the reports all mentioned that. Though it seems that something like this would go unreported quite a lot. Another puzzle for an enemy surrounded by them.
At first, he patrolled more vigilantly than usual, trying to race around the Ritopolis skies, searching for any clue. While this turned up nothing, he did something that the captain never resorted to. You never come to the precinct.
Usually I have no reason for it.
So why did you come to me for once?
You gave me all the details we have on this masked enemy, but my patrols have turned up nothing. I figured your experience in hunting down clues would be essential.
What do I look like to you? A private detective? It's not like I have the right attire, nor do I have that experience for which you are seeking.
Then tell me, why did I come here?
Hold on, Captain Writ. There's something my force has turned up. A common link between all the attacks. It may help.
Then out with it, man. I don't have all this time to banter with you when they could be attacking someone else. Heaven forbid if another enemy showed up while I'm preoccupied.
Please, calm down. Pretty much every incident reported to us has come with the same kind of couching language. Based on this, the clan strikes only when the writer is struggling to advance. That seems to be coordinated with this enemy's attack.
That gives me a great idea. Thank you for the tip, Chief. I'll see myself out.
This inspiration needs a bit of explanation, but we believe in showing rather than just telling. If the episodes line up, then you will learn about this later on in this episode.
I wonder what I should write about today. Here's this story, and the main character has nowhere to go. It's almost a shame. Why is this so hard to write about?
As he complained, mostly for show, he kept stretching frequently, looking for any way to avoid the actual writing process.
If this ripe environment isn't enough for the fiends to show themselves, then perhaps I need to be craftier.
The captain typed up a random character name and left it sitting on his desktop. As most writers know, even a single random word is preferable to a blank page. But to the captain's astonishment, he couldn't figure out how to proceed.
What the devil? I had almost forgotten what it feels like to create my own work, given how long I've been fighting for other people's stories.
At what point the ruse stopped and the reality began, the captain couldn't tell, but the sudden presence of assailants jarred him into the present.
You must be the heathen plot ninja clan I've heard so much about. Prepare yourselves. You've messed with the wrong writer today.
Unfortunately, most longtime listeners probably realize that the captain was at his finest using ranged attacks, and these ninjas overwhelmed even the muscular Captain Writ with ease. He was pinned to his chair, watching the ninjas work.
You fiends! Stop messing with my draft! It's a gem in the making, I tell you! Stop!
Once finished, they wasted no time releasing him and vanishing from the premises nearly as quick as they came. As to his draft...
While it looked like they had no pattern from the chair, their results really do speak for themselves.
Where he only had left the character's name, the ninjas had vastly extended it into a scene featuring a strike from the ninjas, quite similar to his own experience, minus the restraining, and immediately kickstarting a plot.
It's practically magical. Wait, I'm not here to admire the results. The bait worked amazingly, but I couldn't capture them. At least I can delete the words that they...
An idea struck him with the full force of a freight train.
That's it! I could use their words, or just remove them freely. But I'm practically overflowing with creativity again. Incredible! No wonder people didn't complain about their work.
The longer he considered this encounter, the more conflicted Captain Writ became. On one hand, of course the people of Retopolis deserved a chance to create in peace without fear a band of ninjas would slash through their lives and their drafts if they couldn't proceed. On the other, the ninjas weren't inherently evil.
They didn't even save their changes. Wow, how considerate.
They obviously didn't cause irreparable damage either, so the captain puzzled over how to proceed. Was it even worth stop this enemy?
Will Captain Writ tackle the threat of the Plot Ninja Clan? Would he even win if he tried? Find out by listening to the rest of Captain Writ versus the Plot Ninja Clan, available on your nearest old-timey radio. Special thanks to the co-hosts of the Writ Wit for sharing this excerpt. We now return you to that program. Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of the Writ Wit, the show where the writers unite, but then divide bickering over silly things like syntax and other word choices.
Right.
Oh, and in honor of my dyslexic father, where they sit and untie.
Ah, yes.
I don't know if Donald actually knew this.
No,
My
I
dad
didn't.
was
You
dyslexic.
mentioned it, but I'm assuming since
Yeah.
when he was part of the demonic ritual, he sold his soul to Santa.
Yeah, exactly. Right. No, but that's why I tell dyslexic jokes every so often. I actually have a cousin who is also minor dyslexia as well. That said, the reason I thought of bringing this up, aside from the typical untie joke, is that my dad loved books, but because of dyslexia, he didn't like actually reading.
So he had a lot of audiobooks.
Exactly. He listened to the Jim Dale audiobooks audiobook form of the Harry Potter series countless times.
I've heard the Stephen Fry one's pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't heard
Although
that.
he's got a great
Jim Dale
voice,
is my
so...
jam. Jim Dale is my jam, man, because Dad listened to them so much that's what I
Now when you
identify
read
with.
Harry Potter, you just read it imagining Jim Dale's voice, I'm assuming.
Exactly. Even for Hermione, which was surprisingly feminine. And well, I mean, that's the thing, though. Like, generally, voice actors or, voiceover work, you have to have a very malleable voice, right? It's really cool. I admire that. But it's far more believable, especially after living in Japan in the last few years and seeing all of these freaking anime projects do this. It's far more conceivable for women to get roles in both genders, particularly as boy characters, than it is the
than it is the inverse.
I was going to tell you this. I guess I can tell you on air. I had learned this earlier. You know in Ratchet Deadlocked? The 3 kids that were, like, always watching the commercials?
Yeah, the ones with... Always the one with Dallas and Juanita, right?
Yeah, well, like, one of them was with Dallas and Juanita at the end, but, like, they were the ones that they did those subject tests to try and figure out... sell them the Ace Hardlight products.
Oh, yes.
And, like, they
all
did that,
wanted Ratchet
and they did that
stuff
thing where they wore
instead.
the pajamas, and, like, they had the superpower pajamas.
Yeah, okay, what about the 3 kids?
The one that's the fatter kid is actually voiced by the same voice actress who's Juanita.
Wow.
Yeah. The one who's like, I don't
not
know,
expect
maybe that
that.
Lombax guy who smoked Reactor. I didn't realize that was Nika Futterman. That's her name. But they're both Nika Futterman, so that's kind of funny. She does a good convincing
really
little
cool.
boy.
Well, and, you know, it's far more convincing for them to do a prepubescent boy than it is for a man to
Right, but you still have to add a little
prepubescent
bit of
boy.
manly gruff to it, even through the...
Oh, no, I
like
right,
a little bit
I
of
mean, it's not-
to it,
it's
you know,
not-
into that preview.
It's not simply deepening your voice, but, like, I mean, obviously there's got to be a trick. Anyway,
Well,
sorry,
we should...
we're getting a
yeah,
little off the rails about it.
I'd say that, like... I'd hope I got that fact right about the voice actors, otherwise it would be an erroneous one. And speaking of which...
Oh, wow.
our-
We are in the, well, okay, the second one that we've recorded together.
But
in
this is
Scrap
technically the
Bag,
third episode of the
this is
set.
the third of the set.
Let's say
but
that first
however,
one was like
we're
a
little delayed on
prologue
stuff.
to this.
Sure, I guess. Anyway,
This is still
but
chapter
we're-
2, so...
We're still doing our regular segment, the vocabulary vitamin of the
Yes.
month, and because I actually came up with quite a lot regarding these episodes this time, I didn't have to come up with a vocabulary vitamin of the month. So take it away,
Yes,
Donald.
you did the Captain Writ cereal, which should be in this episode. We'll find out.
Well, you said yourself not to mention that. Why are you
I
doing-
can break my own rules. I don't give a frick. Anyways, the vocabulary vitamin of the month, the word is erroneous. Simple definition is wrong or incorrect. Like, it would be best not to make any erroneous assumptions.
Don't we usually spell the word? Or is that just me?
Oh, okay, I can spell it. I don't remember. Erroneous. Erroneous.
Erroneous. Thank you.
I hope...
Now, get out there and take your vitamin, listeners. If you want to share excerpts with us where you actually use these vitamins, we'd love to share those on the air for other fans.
I was thinking about defenestrating that guy, but I knew that would be erroneous.
Now, good luck finding a way to include, what was it, epitome was last
Epitome
time?
and
the
superlative?
other one, superlative.
Those
yeah,
are our
good luck.
4,
Anyway,
right? Or was that 5? I can't
this better not become a thing, by the way, because we're gonna be bending over, freaking backwards, sideways, and upside down to make all of them
I was
fit into one
superlative in my position as the epitome of the company, but then some guy made the erroneous assumption
the company doesn't even make sense.
to come at me, and so I defenestrated him. And is there one? Is that all of them? I lost track.
That's the 4 for right now. We've only done this for.
Wait, is there
last
4 or
person.
5?
But anyway,
There's epitome,
It should be 4.
erroneous,
Let me
superlative,
look.
and defenestrate.
I've been keeping notes, so we don't repeat things stupidly. Let me check. So professional. Superlative, defenestrate, epitome, and erroneous.
Okay,
So
it is
4.
4. Okay.
Including the one we just introduced. Anyways, so go out there, take your vitamin, listeners. Until next set,
All right.
where we have another.
All
Now,
right. Let's think about. Let's keep the status quo going, shouldn't we, with this podcast? And speaking of which,
you are trying to make up for not having any forced segues last time, aren't you?
oh, that was. I know. I thought it'd be more comedic of me to not do it there.
I guess so.
And speaking of which,
All right.
preemptively.
Imagine.
Well, no,
imagine
retroactively,
this
that's the word.
situation, listeners. Imagine this situation, listeners.
Okay.
You've put in a self-insert character that's way more virtuous than any other in your
Oh
story.
no.
Maybe your team leader is a paragon, and there just isn't a way for him, her, or it to feel
Or
dynamic
they,
because
you
they
know?
have no room
There's-
to grow.
There's different. They's now a can be a pronoun.
Yep.
Sorry, I forgot they.
Yes.
How does one handle that character yet still advance the story?
I don't know.
That's our topic today.
Find out.
I made the joke in the title, and readers.
Listeners.
Well, if you read the description, you'd see
they're
it.
reading the title. It's not like we say the title.
They're
at
reading the
beginning of
title,
episode.
yeah. So that's not terribly wrong. That I made a joke about this being the static quo, having character progress despite their status quo being really freaking not. They didn't have very much room left over.
We're writers,
What I'm
guys.
trying to
We can
say,
come up with
failing.
stuff.
I'm sorry, my brain doesn't want to move at proper speeds today.
Okay.
Anyway, the first question of how to deal with this character is what is happening through your narrative, right? Can you present challenges tough enough for this character to progress?
Well, what the character goes through doesn't necessarily have to be a tough enemy to punch, Like, the drama might be more character-driven. Like, I don't watch anime, so I haven't seen this particular example, but I know there's a series called One Punch Man, all about a guy so powerful
you're gonna
he can
reference
beat every
it
enemy
anyway.
with one punch. But regardless of their strength, he can beat everyone with one punch. So he gets bored.
Which means you got to get to the punch. Maybe he isn't available to get to the punch right away. Who knows?
So he gets bored and deals with other issues, including the issue of what to do when you have no worthy physical opposition. Maybe I should watch the show to make my point better, but who can be bothered? Well, listeners, go watch One Punch Man.
As somebody who watches approximately 2 anime ever,
Digimon
Rich,
and what else? Pokemon, I guess.
Did you watch Pokemon?
I was saying what you watched.
No. I'm saying you haven't watched more than 2 anime.
That's generous.
But actually, in my experience, I really love Digimon and Yu-Gi-Oh!
Right.
But there are others that I've seen along the way as well. Anyhow, in my opinion, the plot can have an impact on this character.
Right.
But their personality, there really is nowhere for them to grow if they're already too virtuous.
Right. Too good of a puncher.
If they're too good of a person, they don't really have a way to become a better one.
Right.
That said, maybe it works in the opposite direction, that they progress negatively because they see some really awful stuff.
They realize just how much the world sucks.
And, their opinion sours, and they start treating things differently and become imperfect by that means. If this guy, I say guy, it doesn't have to be, is on some kind of team, the imperfection around him or her may be enough to offset the fact this person has nowhere to grow.
Right, exactly.
Because the other characters can progress through their prisms instead, right? But at least make sure that she, he, it, they isn't all things to all people. That's quite impossible, and if they're breaking the realm of possibility, then they will never be imperfect, right?
This is kind of like we're talking about Mary Sue's, like we did, I think, in episode 12, I think, yeah.
Oh my god, I don't remember. Go listen to it, listeners.
But I talk about that a little bit later, so...
Yeah, we'll save that for your diatribe about that one character again. I know you don't like that particular character, but geez, man, this is like the 3rd time.
Well, we'll get to it, but she's going to become relevant again in the coming months. And based on what I've heard, they've had to reshoot certain things because... I'll get to it, okay?
Let's not spoil too much of that before we talk about the diatribe itself. Anyhow, next question then being,
yes.
If you have no room to grow this particular character, not explicitly the only character, what other tactics can you use to make the story dynamic and fun?
Well, how they interact with the other people can be really fun. Like, if a guy's a goody two-shoes with no moral ambiguity or shade of gray whatsoever, I don't know, make him have to go to a bad part of town where only the ruthless survive. Or pair him up with an anti-hero on a more standard mission.
To your point, I think showing them another perspective is a very easy way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what Captain America had to do in The Winter Soldier when he was like, I'm an upstanding guy from the 40s, where it's a clear good versus evil. Oh, wait, things are more gray and complicated here in the modern times. So,
S.H.I.E.L.D. wouldn't have continued to exist if it hadn't been for Hydra.
Exactly.
Anyway.
This is somewhat related, as it's a similar idea, but in The Office, there are characters who are making the jokes,
and then there are characters who are stoic and with no sense of humor in the slightest. And yet, everyone in that show is hilarious because of how they interact with each other. The characters without humorous tendencies react in their stoic, unfunny way to others' ridiculous behavior, which actually makes them really funny.
Fair. Like, how are you not laughing at this? It's hilarious, and you start laughing at
Or
it.
it's just like something ridiculous happens, and they're just like,
I suppose again, showing them a different perspective, but to put a familiar name on it, the odd couple.
right, exactly. That's what makes duos so great.
Well, in duos, you don't have to cut anybody out. Trios, somebody has to be the third wheel.
We all have experience with that.
I've been there too many times.
I know we all have experience with that. We've all been the third wheel.
Yeah.
I think, whenever we went to visit our friend when we went to New Mexico, there were instances where all three of us at one point felt like the third wheel.
By the way, if you're listening, buddy, we love you. Hope to see you soon.
See you soon. He's gonna come visit me and take care.
He's gonna be here. Yeah,
help me take care of all the animals while my parents go out of town.
I won't see him though. Anyway,
we can Skype with you, maybe.
Maybe we'll have to do something. Anyway.
Yeah,
but yeah, because the individual pairs would have their own conversation, and the other person's just like, well, I guess I'm sitting this one out.
Right. But so for The Office, the same logic can be used for characters without the standard flaws of a character in need of series development. If a character is perfect, but they're with a character who's not, they can make it work as an effective team in terms of narrative wise,
So you're suggesting that somebody who has flaws and somebody who has no visible flaws can be treated the same way in this idea?
Yeah, sort of, yeah.
Okay. All right. You were beating around the bush. I figured I'd summarize.
Yes, please do. I lose my train of thought. Okay, I was really hungry, listeners, earlier, and so I got a bunch of pretzels before recording, and now I'm starting to get that kind of little crash after being really hungry and then eating.
To get the digestive
settling in there.
The digestive blues, right?
Yeah.
Well, and you probably feel like you need to drink some water because all the salt.
But anyway, do have my podcast juice.
Considering that this episode was inspired expressly from a Sentai show, my answer is to make sure they aren't alone.
I think it's characters being alone. It's that's a whole. Well, I guess we did a whole episode about monologues.
It's not possible. No one is an island of their own.
No man is an island. Yep.
That's why I said no one. Proper pronoun
I
usage.
guess that's true.
Jeez.
What about people with hive minds? You gotta not discount them.
No ones are alone? Anyway.
No person is alone. Oh, excuse me.
Oh,
I'm a wolf trapped in a man's body.
No ones are alone. I think I got it. Anyway, yeah, so the reason this came up as a little bit of a peek behind the curtain is that in the 1980s, and maybe a little bit still after that too, after that decade ended, most of the team leaders in the Sentai series were just gems of people.
Right, they're more
they
idols
they didn't have any major weaknesses. They didn't have any things that somebody would look at and say, wow, that's a really bad habit you have. Nothing. They were perfect. They knew everything. They were Renaissance men. They were the best moral, upright character on their team at some times and others.
Sounds boring.
They're so static. And static characters are boring.
That could work if one of them was perfect like that and the others were kind of more flawed, more...
Which is the point I was making, that they weren't by themselves, which means you didn't have to suffer through all the interactions. If they're always the better person, regardless of the situation, then only focusing on them would become very boring very quickly. Right. But since there were other characters who were more dynamic, growing, forced into change by the events happening to them, and again, we said no person is an island. Obviously, you aren't writing them alone to begin with few particular exceptions. Right. But in a regular story, I'm referring to on page that they shouldn't be alone. Right. There's always got to be somebody there as kind of a buffer to take the shine off this impossibly bright, polished person.
Give it a bit of a smudge.
Reflect it. No, not a smudge, but just, have something that the light is shining on, so it's not glaring you, the reader, straight in the face, kind of a thing.
It's
a weird metaphor.
a planet,
Sorry, go with it.
an exoplanet that was discovered that absorbs 99.8% of all light, so it's just this big, black, weird blob.
True.
It's like the opposite
It's
of Venus.
counterintuitive that
Venus
it
is
isn't
so
white,
bright because it reflects a lot of light. This absorbs it, but it's a planet, so
Yeah. Well, and the thing about that with light in particular, it's kind of counterintuitive. You'd think that white would be the brightest. It reflects all light, whereas black absorbs all light.
right. It's like the thing with moth. I've heard that moths.
This is why
I've heard that moths aren't actually attracted to the brightest light. They're attracted to the darkest point, which happens to be right behind the brightest light. Don't quote me on that, though.
or in the light. Like when you wear black,
Yeah.
you retain heat better, and so you get warm easier.
This is also a science podcast, listeners.
I mean, you were talking about space. Get
Right,
off.
I know. I don't even know why I brought it up. I just
No, it's because I said something about the, make sure that something else can get between you and the impossibly bright light from this perfect character.
Right.
Anyhow, here's something that may be a little less obvious as a way to handle this. What if they're still dissatisfied with themselves? Dig more into the motivations of why they seem so perfect on the outside, even if the reality is different. Showcase the work that they do to get there.
Right.
Like they're constantly working out to keep the six-pack, not just, gifted with it. Or maybe have them acknowledge their superiority and become flummoxed with how to continue improving. Donald mentioned One Punch Man, and, you have to figure out what to do, and nobody challenges you physically, so you find ways for them to challenge you mentally or something.
Well, it's like
There's one
another anime
character,
example is like Goku from Dragon Ball Z. Like there's always someone better than him, but he is already pretty powerful. And whenever there's an enemy that's stronger than him, he works his butt off to become stronger, even though he's already, by extension, one of the strongest beings in the universe. So,
because like any martial arts affiliated anime is good to know, it's always an arms race. Anyhow,
literally in some cases.
Well, literally, yeah. But like, they have to have something to motivate them. There's one character I read a summary about in a comic. I have not read this comic, but it sounded like this guy was a modern day Renaissance man, and he's just fed up.
Right.
Because nobody can match him intellectually. All of the things he knows in any one field, nobody can match him. Too perfect. But the problem was that he was dissatisfied with the whole thing.
Right.
How can he still improve? And that's where the conflict came from. Now, it might not change the character until something breaks him.
Right.
But that is still more dynamic than letting them be perfect and letting other people evolve instead.
Right. Well, it's like a good example of that as well. Have you ever seen any of Rick and Morty?
No, I haven't.
It's really good. I like it a lot. It's really funny and very, very creative. Very dark at times, very messed up, but also...
Yeah, I've heard that.
But it's also like really, really funny and really clever at certain things. You have to have several science degrees in order to get the jokes. That's what some people say, which are so dumb.
Well, I mean, Big Bang Theory was marketed at smarter people. By
Big Bang
using
Theory
these
is
smarter
more
terminology.
about people who appreciate nerds but aren't nerds themselves. Because the nerds don't watch Big Bang Theory. They watch the nerdy shows like Star Trek and like Dragon Ball Z and like...
I didn't realize there was a... No.
I don't know, but like, anyways. So, Rick and Morty. Rick is really, really smart. He's one of the smartest beings in the universe. Like, he has portal guns. He can create realities. He can... with his science, he can... Whenever he dies, he usually has a backup somewhere. He can transfer between universes. He can do all this stuff. He can do pretty much anything he wants. He made, like, a playland for his daughter when his daughter was going insane. He tried to protect the neighborhood. He made, like, this fake dimension for her to be... He does all this stuff. He never really has a foe that challenges him too much. So what does he become from this? He becomes a flat-out nihilist.
He's like, what is the point of anything? Like, the universe is infinite, and there's infinite me's, there's infinite things I can do. What's the freaking point of anything? Everything is worthless and useless. So, it's kind of an interesting way to go about it.
Provides no intrinsic value to it. Well, and I think it's a very extreme case, but obviously it works. Well, and he's not alone either, because the other half of the title, Morty, should have some impact. I know nothing about the show.
Yeah, grandson that he constantly drags along in his adventures.
Yeah, adventures, such that he wants to destroy everything because none of it has purpose, and yet he's having his...
He could destroy, he just doesn't, but yeah.
Anyways, finally, to put these two experts at writting on the spot, do you need to simply make a more flawed character?
Not always. You can make them work in different ways. Like, a character, regardless of their flaws or moral complexion, can work as a vessel for the narrative by contrast within the character by its contrast with the character's stance. Like, if you have a character that's so strong he can beat anybody, have him deal with issues, like we mentioned, with whether or not he could save everybody, or how he can interact with others lesser than him. Like, if you have a character that always makes the right choices, giving them a particularly sadistic villain who makes them have to make the tough choices, or save only a few lives over others.
Well, and usually I can predict how those are likely going to end up, even if it's...
Yeah, you usually take a third option where they save everybody, but they try their best to do that.
Well, they try. They try.
If you can have a character who can solve any calculation or figure out any riddle, give them a physical challenge. Like...
Sure.
And so on. Like, there's...
Take them out of their arena.
Yeah. Like, there's...
Take them out of their best arena and put them into something else that's going to make them struggle.
Right. There's always a way to make a character more interesting, so give them as many or as few flaws as you want. As long as the narrative still provides a struggle for them, and the problems presented still force them to go beyond how they normally would before, then it doesn't matter what the struggle or problems are, only that they exist.
Can I interrupt you real quick? I'm treating this question as, like... You've already made this character, so you say as many or as few flaws. Are you referring to extra flaws, or are you referring to flaws in general?
Just flaws in general.
So you have to rewrite the character with these flaws that you plan to add, or
no? I'm just saying that, like, if you have a character with no flaws, you can challenge them in other ways, as long as the narrative challenges, as long as his flawlessness doesn't negate the narrative struggles.
It has to be through the plot, in other words, because if it's not coming through the character's own struggle.
Yeah, and like, as long as the character's like flawlessness doesn't negate the plot struggles, then it's fine.
Fair enough.
And this is where I bring up my rant.
Before you do that, I do want to preface this a bit. Earlier I mentioned self-insert characters. They are not the only notable example of that kind of thing. These don't have to be self-inserts either, of course, but now that I've brought the self-insert thing back to the mind, listeners, please prepare yourselves for Donald to step up on his soapbox and rant again about this character.
So there's this is a difference when I mentioned these flaws and like how they deal with the narrative struggles. This is the difference between a Mary Sue and simply a powerful character. A powerful character still struggles through the narrative challenges. A Mary Sue does not. This is the difference between Rey from Star Wars and Wonder Woman. Like,
I think it's almost to the point where you don't even have to say from Star Wars now.
There's Mr. Ray from Finding Nemo.
Yeah, because Finding Nemo is really on your mind here.
Anyways, so I wanted to use this example. Some people like compare like Rey and Luke, but I'm going to say another female character because I feel like a lot of people who don't like Rey, as well as the reasons I don't like it, some of them are like, oh, but she's a woman, and you know, I'm like, I'm not like that. No, like, so I'm comparing it to another woman.
So you're trying to compare apples to apples instead of apples to
right,
oranges.
and saying how one apple is good.
Weird.
And one apple has a dirty worm in it.
Oh, God, which one has the dirty worm?
No, not like that. Oh, God.
That actually wasn't where I was going for. I'm just like, which one are you referring to as flawed here? Actually, I should know that answer. But,
yeah, I was going to say. All right, so Rey and Wonder Woman. Both are inherently powerful characters who trounce any physical opposition their way. But Wonder Woman's, especially in her movie, her narrative struggles come from having to deal with the moral issues of humanity during World War I, and whether or not they're worth saving after they're so easily listened to the seductions of conflict from Ares.
Which humans tend to conflict anyway,
Right.
especially if people don't share their opinions. But
Right, so yeah, she deals
You
with
know,
foes
first
pretty
person,
easily, but it's like, okay, I'm gonna deal with this foe because I want to save these people, but these other people like also need to be saved. So like, oh, I need to do that. Like, I need to go through this town that's been enslaved, so I have to fight these people. I have to rally the other troops. Like, there's her struggles come from not like she still struggles, but I don't know. It's like it.
Can I throw out that over Wonder Woman's long history, that probably the biggest struggle is overcoming the perception of why she was actually created versus what she
Yeah, is she
stands
made of
for?
clay? Was she birthed by Zeus? Was she...
No, not referring to her origin, but like if you actually look at why the creator did what he did,
Oh.
and the symbol that she's supposed to be.
You talking about the bondage thing?
Yes.
Okay, well we've hope Wonder Woman has evolved past that, thankfully.
Well, I mean, that's the thing though. That's the biggest struggle she as a fictional character. That is the thing. Now, within her own adventures, obviously, the narrative allows for struggles, as Donald
But like
brought up.
also,
I just wanted to bring that.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just what happens within the scope of your book.
sometimes it's out of
that's
universe,
doing
yeah.
this. It's out of universe. It has to do with the reaction of other people to these events, to these characters. Rey has inspired passionate
She has.
diatribes and passionate support.
she has. Anyway, so Wonder
Although
Woman,
probably
as
less
well as
so
being,
support.
she's physically strong, but she's also trained for decades, probably centuries actually, to become as strong as she was.
Depending on the timeline, yeah.
But meanwhile, Rey, her narrative struggles are mostly physical, and she beats them all without any training. Like the story simply,
Her stills are. Did I say her stills? Her skills are good, but there's still no substitute for actually practicing,
Right.
which makes it unrealistic, as you've complained
like the
about. many
story
times.
simply solves the problems for her. Like she does have character-focused issues, like finding her origins and her place in the galaxy. But these are used by the narrative to push her forward towards this Jedi path, and it's precisely that path she barely struggles with. Like this is why she's a Mary Sue and Wonder Woman is not. Rey's power negates the narrative struggle, while Wonder Woman's power does not. Basically, if you have a super strong character in one way or another, make sure the narrative still tests them in another way. Anyways, ran over.
You've got to challenge them somehow,
Yeah.
or else it's not interesting.
I was gonna say earlier.
and this is why this.
I was
go
mentioning like the reshoots thing. There's a rumor. Now it's not from the best source, so it's probably not true. But there is a rumor that Rey in the new movie did something incredibly powerful out of the blue, and the audience laughed. And Bob Iger, who was at the premiere, this wasn't a premiere. This was like a test screening thing.
At a screening,
test screen, like audience. And Bob Iger was furious at this and had them change it, so because they didn't want people to laugh. I don't think this is true personally, but if it is, that'd be.
If it is, it's really damning.
Yeah, so like it's not from the best source, so I don't know if it's
Well, and the reputability of reports like that is always called into question, no matter the source, because it's what he said versus what most people didn't witness.
right.
So,
Anyways, there you go.
but I mentioned the team leaders, and if you have a character who cannot be dynamic because their evolution already happened, it's really boring. But your
Exactly.
story doesn't have to be. Whether you use other characters or if you have a narrative that challenges them. I think I've taken to calling this the perfect Red. Because they're usually the team leaders.
Yeah,
right?
Red is the leader. Look at Power Rangers. Look at Bionicle. Our two favorite franchises.
Well, I mean, Tahu is arguably the one who takes charge, but does that make him the leader
He's
for sure or not?
considered the leader of the original
Sentai,
Torah, but
the Japanese versions do actually subvert this a couple of times. Like on the show, they'll recognize that somebody is the leader, even if Red is the focal point.
right.
I won't get into too much about that because it's not the point of this episode, but like having a static character is not a good thing. So how do you make them dynamic? If you add more flaws, that's one way.
Right.
I don't know how you're going to do this if the character is so perfect that they have no room for that, but I still think though that it can work having this perfect character as long as you have other characters with plenty of growth in their own
Right,
future.
exactly, yeah.
So if you're changing the character sheet on this perfect red, then that's the last resort.
Right.
If the rest of it hasn't turned to the story dynamic enough that test audiences aren't laughing at Rey's sudden exhibition of power or whatever the case may be, that's the thing you need to turn to. But you could make it work without necessarily adding more flaws or what. Even saying it's your final trump card to improve the situation and add dynamism to the character, adding flaws to a character is never a bad
No, exactly.
thing.
That's what makes them human. But
well, unless they're dinosaurs.
you know what I mean.
Humans wearing dinosaur scales, as I always say.
And feathers. Don't forget the feathers.
And Donald's series. Don't forget feathers. I'm sorry.
Anyways, so that's...
So, it's one of those things like, if you keep challenging the status quo, that the character won't remain static, thus the static
Yes,
quo,
exactly.
it's better. So shoot for that. Whatever that looks like, you've got a couple other options, especially if you have other characters in tow. So that's the best way to go. But don't be afraid to add something anyway.
Yeah.
Don't let it get to the point where they're perfect. Maybe it looks that way to everyone on the outside, but inside they're not settled. Inside they have fears and doubts just like anybody does,
Right, exactly.
And show that. So they don't seem just perfect to the audience, and thus, I really hate Rey because she's too perfect, as Donald has said like multiple times. Maybe not in those exact words.
You're talking as if I'm obsessed with Rey.
I'm not referring to it as if you're obsessed with Rey, because you're decisively not obsessed with Star Wars in general.
I'm just sick
But
of Star
anytime you
Wars.
talk
I want
about
it to go.
because Rey's
I've heard The
gone.
Mandalorian's good. A lot of people like it. I don't care.
Well, then you probably don't want to subscribe to Disney Plus.
I have subscribed to Disney Plus for the Marvel stuff and the...
Exactly. You can't avoid it.
I watched Toy Story on it. It's been a while since I've seen the first Toy Story. It was good.
Yeah, no, it's a good film.
It is.
Toy Story 2 is my favorite of that.
Toy
But I
Story 2
still
is
have
also
not-
my favorite.
I still have not seen 3, so I really
I don't really care
for
for 3, but 4 is really good. I like 4.
You've seen 4. I didn't know. Anyway.
Yeah, anyways.
So that's it for this episode. If you have any
in our
questions,
set of random grab bag episodes, yes.
Well, this episode, because the next one's going to be a different thing, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
You didn't need to say it then. Anyway,
Yeah, I'm gonna say this every
have-
episode. It's gonna drive you mad.
If you have any questions, if you're having a particular trouble working out of a situation, get in touch with us. We'd be happy to help. If you want us to share those things with other fans, then we'll be happy to read your stuff on the show as well. Just let us know if that's okay. But as to getting in touch with us, please use your own email system or go to Matthew Donald Creator website and the contact page there.
Yes.
The email address is Matt D. That's with 2 T's. We share Matt D in common, so if you're going to specify, please do David or Donald. That'd be great.
Please do.
You can also follow Donald Professional's social media stuff.
Yes.
And I'll let him tell you about that.
Follow me at Matthew Donald Creator on Facebook, at Matthew Donald 64 on Twitter, and Matthew Donald 64 on Instagram. Why 64? Because that's how many shares of stock I invested in Blockbuster Video when I first activated my Twitter. I wonder how that's going.
All right, well, that's it from us at the Writ with the 2 twits who talk about writting, listeners.
Yep.
Until next time when we're back with more.
I'm Matt Donald.
And I'm Matt David. We'll see you then.
Bye.
The Writ